All right, welcome to another video. This is going to be an epic video. As you can see, we have our oracles together here. We are orchestrating an experience over the 9/9, 9/10, 9/11 portal. This is going to be an event for women, for the divine feminine, for the womb keepers of planet Earth. We're going to be engaging in levels of energy and templates that are really just now coming online in the grids. Healing the womb is a fractal experience, meaning we are going to be addressing the personal, the ancestral, the lineage healing of the womb, of our sexual healing, the societal and interdimensional trauma that we've experienced in our womb. But ultimately, this event is really for the highly templated, highly coded starseed indigos who are here holding space for a planetary, solar system, galactic, and even cosmic universal template healing restoration. So the whole idea is, as we are bringing in these healings in our own light body, in our own DNA, that is fractaling outwards through our ancestral and our galactic lineages, all the way into the cosmic template energies as we are completing a planetary grid upgrade, or it feels like a ley line change altogether. And we'll go into what that will entail later on. What I do want to talk about before we get started is that I've been getting a lot of questions from you guys, like, can I still participate if I have no idea what you're talking about? And the answer is absolutely yes. None of this is really mental. The mental information that we are offering in language is really for the human self to process, for the mind, is to let you know kind of the background story of these things. But ultimately, this container is an alchemical container. It's an alchemical cauldron. We're all bringing it together in this cohesive intention to activate these new grids, to clean up these outdated distortions and traumas. And so even if you have no idea what we're talking about, if you're feeling called and you just feel like you're meant to be there, don't let this mental information stop you from getting there. So with me today is literally the perfect combination of Oracle sisters to dive into these subjects. So I met Marguerite back in 2018. Hi, Marguerite.
Hi, Z.
I actually first found Marguerite's work back in 2018 when I started peeking into the trauma body of the planet and specifically the women, because I started feeling like there was stuff happening in the dream time, that I would wake up feeling like there was sexual energy. I also started seeing, different reptilian forms and energies and things like that. And so I went on the internet and I started researching the stuff, and I found Marguerite's article called The Reptilian Sex War or something like that. And I read it, and I actually never reached out to her until 2021 when a mutual friend of ours actually brought her over to my house. And it was over the July day out of time. Her tire blew and she was stuck at my house for an extra day. And I think that was totally by divine design. And Marguerite is an amazing woman. I have so much reverence and respect for her because she has devoted a very, very long time and a lot of effort in unearthing the ancient traditions of parthenogenesis and divine birth. And I'm going to let her introduce that part of her work to us.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Z. It's really wonderful to be here with you and feel this momentum and this weaving together of so many oracles like you and Indy. You know, what we're doing here is we're healing the womb on every level of the hologram, as you are saying, because we are in a holographic reality, that when one woman heals her womb, those ripples go out into, all the other wombs, all the way up to the divine level, right? And so the work that I'm doing in virgin birth, that I really started downloading in 2001, and then developed into books and classes and things like that. This work is still developing. Every time you and I have a conversation, Indy, when I saw your video, it's like, when I listen to Lisa Renee, it's like, oh my gosh, further iterations of what I'm talking about are unfolding. It's like we're all collectively unveiling this great mystery at whose core we can call it divine birth, which is sovereign conception. sovereign conception of the goddess, her ability to conceive, because she is the totality, she is the yin yang, she is the male female within herself. We know from, lore going back into infinity that this goddess originally could create by herself, because she was male female, she was whole, right? So this is not about like doing away with the male aspect, it's just that it's encompassed within her. But that energy, that information started to go missing. But the human women, human people originally were that template, and that's one of the things I'm going to be talking about in my presentations, that we see it in Plato. Plato says that the original human form was hermaphroditic. I think he even said it had like 4 arms and 4 legs. And, it had both genders within it. And then at some point in the human history, it was torn asunder. And that was a great trauma that humans have never recovered from. So it may well be that when I'm talking about virgin birth priestesshoods, which was like a later development, that harks all the way back to the original human form, when people were giving birth, conceiving at will and giving birth, by themselves, because they were already sovereign, they were already whole in and of themselves. I would say maybe this goes back to ancient Mu, which is like, right, the foundation of Lemuria. There's something about this in our conception of Lemuria, that this is the human form. And then what I'm going to be talking about in my presentations is how that migrated. And then when humans were presumably torn asunder, how the females of our race attempted to continue that process of virgin birth, but it was much, much harder. And they had to move into specialized holy orders in order to do it. And then as the veils began to become thicker on planet Earth, and that information was accessed less and less and less, it became more and more difficult, more and more of a rarefied activity. And it also migrated from parthenogenesis, which is sovereign conception and birth without males, into Tantra, holy Tantra, a male-female kind of intimate interaction on a sacred level. The purpose always being to bring in the highest being to the planet possible, which used to be a given back in ancient Mu, ancient Lemuria, but started degrading as the veils became thicker. And these priestesshoods attempted to retain it, whether it was through parthenogenesis or self-conception, or whether it was through high ritual tantra. We were trying to keep high-level beings coming to the planet so that these beings would have extraordinary powers by, human standards. They would be able to help us remember what we needed to get back on track and try to re-elevate ourselves and get into the positive timeline again. So that's just a little bit of what I'm going to be going through, with much more fascinating details as we look at Sophia, High Holy Sophia Goddess, her priestesses like Mother Mary and others, and then where we're going today with all of this.
Yeah, so I feel like accentuating the part where we're going today with all of this is really important, because when Marguerite was over at my place, we had a cacao ceremony, and we were trying to really oracle, why this whole idea of parthenogenesis is really sparking in our society right now. And what we saw was that this is really a priestess art that is resurfacing. It is returning into the conscious awareness. And I feel like beyond, just the feminine birthing, like the furthest extent, it's like a spectrum of our embodiment or empowerment of our original biological abilities. But beyond that, it's about these star children, these avatar children who are wanting to be born. And those of you that have followed my work for a while, you know that these little beings have hired me to be their spokesperson, to find their parents and to ask them to conceive them in, right alignment and in correct rights and things like this. And so this is why we are also hosting these events, is to bring in through these original templates and talking about these avatar star babies that are coming in. Obviously the information that we got was like, it's not certain if this generation is going to reach the place where we're going to be parthenogenically birthing again, but it's definitely coming. And there will be hundreds of children that will be born this way through the work that we're putting in now. It's like we're rebuilding the priestesshood because, you know, Mary and Anne, the grandmother of Jesus, like they didn't just grow up in the false matrix and then one day, you know, decided to parthenogenically conceive. It was like they had devoted their whole life. They were contained and supported inside of a temple. Their whole lives, they were, you know, devoted to this practice. And so I'm sure Marguerite is going to go into that as well, about what it actually takes to commit to this path of priestesshood, which I feel like is so important, you know, this containment of the sacred path. Because right now in the spiritual community, there is so much secularization of true sacred spiritual teachings, which on the one hand, I feel is good because it's getting out to more people, these ideas and concepts, but is bad because the secularization of divine things is what begins to degrade the teachings and commercializes it, and it loses its original connection and, you know, the depth and the truth behind it. So
Yeah. And see, I want to add, if this is okay, that very weekend that I was there, my tire blew out mysteriously, preventing me from going on in my road trip. And I was like, we both looked at each other. We're like, you are kidding me. There is a nail in my tire. The store is closed. I can't do anything about it until, you know, whatever, Monday. We had that cacao ceremony and we were talking about, well, you know, what is your role in all of this, right? Is that not perhaps the very weekend that you conceived Kara?
I'm pretty sure it was around that same time that Kara was conceived.
Yeah.
I just chills.
Yeah. And right, because we were like, well, what is your role actually going to be? And now here it is, you know, in another form. It wasn't parthenogenesis, but definitely you were working with those energies.
Yeah, and I really believe that it comes down to intention and being connected to creation and having reverence and love for creation at the end of the day. I feel like when we tune into Mu, like at least when I do, it feels very androgynous, because I feel like it's not yet physical, like it wasn't yet a 3D reality. We were still materializing. And so in that reality, there wasn't yet the split. There wasn't yet this concrete physicalization of two separate sexes. We were still, you know, relatively in union.
Yeah. And point here, you know, not to get into a whole can of worms, but the transgender movement, you know, its light side is that it's trying to get at that on some level. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And then there's, though, a hijacked side, right? And so, you know, we honor like what is happening there at the deepest level. And as with everything, looking at, well, what is really the best path for us? What is really the best non-hijacked path that's going to bring that unification, that hermaphroditic? I like to call it hermaphroditic, Hermes, Aphrodite, both, rather than androgyne. Well, that does have male, female in it, but Greek wise, but it implies like sex less. And so I like hermaphroditic because it's like, yeah, you know, bring on the genitalia. Anyway, so that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Thank you for that distinction. All right, so next up, I'm very excited to introduce Indy of Indigo Angel. I was introduced to her work through a friend of mine relatively recently, but when I discovered her work, it blew my mind. She is a master grid reader, grid worker, and I'm gonna actually let her introduce herself.
Well, thank you so much, Z, for having me here and having this beautiful container for us to come together as empowered divine feminines and be able to share our gifts with all the people that we can reach through our vast network when we come together. That is truly incredible and amazing. And I'm so excited to assist and help all the divine feminines that we can ultimately reach through doing this very powerful work. I would say I come from, I don't want to say a different perspective than you guys, but I mean, I do come from a different perspective. I think we all come from a different perspective, the way that we're coming into this work. I myself have been a survivor of the forced breeding programs. And so in this life and in past lives. And so because of my personal experience with dealing directly with reptilians, also having had to manage and learn how to navigate my life with having also hybrid children, and also understanding their needs, understanding what it's like to live with 1 foot in and 1 foot out, understanding that I hold the original angelic templating, and also so do my hybrid children. But having to find a way to exist in that world where I'm dealing head on with the struggles of the aggressiveness, and also some of the very, atrocious behaviors of reptilians, not necessarily from my children, because I love and care for my children very much, but to have that extension of myself connected to a reptilian aspect. And so there's a lot of, I think, inner work, inner evolution, strength that goes into that. And through my own personal experiences and through the healing work that I've been so blessed to be a part of in my life, how I've been kind of chosen for this work, and how I've been cultivated and crafted and designed, and this has been hammered into me from the cosmos, to be able to create all of this healing work for others. I've seen over time and over the last few years of my work, more and more of an implant and tagging system that just becomes more apparent and more present in the divine feminines that I have been working with. And so by seeing that reflection of myself through my own personal tags and implants, my own personal experiences with dealing with reptilians, and also I guess the struggles and just overcoming the difficulties of that within myself, seeing that in other women, it's pushed me forward in creating just an outline or a definition of potential implants and tags that do exist in us from the ancient times, from the Lemurian time, from the original genocidal core world wounding. They're still here in our etheric bodies. And so I just really help women to identify that within themselves, and also provide tools and healing by offering what has been initiated to me from the Lemurian templating. I mean, like, this has come through many, many different deities. This has come through many, many different archetypes, energies, cosmic energies, universal energies. But at the end of the day, what I'm activating to is an actual Lemurian light grid templating within me, many facets of them that are extensions of the original Tiamat gridding structures. And so when I can tune into that information inside myself, I have been granted access to a path of healing that we used to utilize back in the Lemurian and ancient times. So if one is able to open themselves more extensively to their planetary Akashic history, their planetary Akashic timeline, and integrate the fractals and the soul fragmentations of themselves of over thousands and thousands of years, that in itself is a priestesshood initiation and a priestesshood right. And you gain that qualification to then utilize and access those technologies and the healing temples that were provided to us in that timeline. And so that's kind of the core, I think, of what I'm doing and what my work is ultimately rooted in. And so I'm really excited to be able to share all of this with you guys, and all of the women who are going to be attending, because this is going to be huge. I mean, the date that we chose for this container, the time space portal that we're working with, is so significant, because 9/11 in itself is really connected to the root or the core of a lot of the destruction templates on this earth, and also the I want to say like the metatronic parasitic invasions that are suffocating the mother arcing systems on this planet, which is our true natural, spiritual, divine feminine, organic immune system here on this earth that connects us into the womb worlds and connects us into the global planetary network systems as well. And so it's almost like we're sending this intention to just send that clearing and obliterate that metatronic parasitic infection in those arcing systems, and plug in more of the organic templating, so that way we can combat some of the artificial and 3D and 4D false matrix programming, the artificial Michael matrix programming that's really kind of anchored in a lot of the Stargate locations in the Middle East. So like the Iran gates, the Iraq gates, the Babylonian, gate systems, the landmass memory that's holding all of that destruction memory in the landmass. So I think we're going to be sending ripples and waves into those time fields and just clearing more of that energy. That definitely is, I think, ultimately my intent and universal intent, cosmic mother intent. And I think all of you here in this container, I know we're holding that intention together. So it's going to be so exciting. I can't wait.
Yeah, this is really an opportunity for us to step into application of what we know about the womb, that in fact, these wombs are stargates. They're capable of transiting an entire soul into this world, but they're also capable of transiting other things like timelines, entire ley line systems, cosmic creation energy. And I think ultimately what we're talking about is the restoration of our original creator template. And to say that in plainer words, I think what really drew me to Indy's work, the first video of hers I watched was her Lemurian womb restoration, Stargate healing video. And in it, I just felt this love that she had for life itself. And I feel like that is a core tenet, a core quality of a true guardian, right? Because I feel like we can talk about things until our ears fall off, but it needs to come from that place where there is that true reverence for life. That's why we're doing this work. That's why we're so committed to going to these places that are really uncomfortable. And another thing is that Indy really collapses it into our experience. I know that oftentimes in the spiritual community, it could feel like there's the regular world, and then there's the spiritual stuff that's happening. There is, going to work and watching TV, and then there's this, disclosure and the negative aliens. And the fact is, it's not two separate worlds. They're very much one and the same, right? And we're talking about forest breeding programs. It's both, interdimensional and the ancient angelic lines that were abducted and raped in that way, but also just the societal programming around the fallen patriarchy and different bloodlines carrying forth heavy energies that perpetuate child rearing in certain unconscious ways that then lead to certain emotional trauma and unconscious behavior patterns and networks of tension and things like that. And that's really what we're addressing, right? And the byproduct of having those implants and tags is totally okay if you can't see them. But if you are not waking up in the morning and just feeling so excited to start your day, and cosmic energy is coursing through your body, and you're basically just feeling like you're having a beautiful, delightful, pure and pristine orgasmic energy moving through your body while you're having the time of your life, creating whatever your heart is inspired to, doing whatever that fulfills you in your sovereign choice of your use of your time and energy. That's what we're talking about, the sovereign original template of your sovereign creatorship. So less about, literally immaculately conceiving, even though if you're called to that path is open. But along this path, there's just levels to this. And it begins with just having sovereign creatorship over your own choice of what you do with your time and what you exert your energy. And most people don't even have freedom over that. And that's really what we're talking about, right? That enslavement of our creation energy. And realizing then that if we're not in that peak state and we're not experiencing joy and delight and orgasmic pleasure through our bodies, then we realize that there's things that are keeping your body from experiencing those things. And this is kind of the container that we've created to explore those things. Indy, I don't know if you want to tag on to that.
Yeah, I think you sum it up so beautifully. And I love listening to you talk. Yeah, it's definitely a siphoning of our creation energies, our reproduction energies, our fertility, our offspring, our womb energies. There is a lot of nefarious agendas that are running here on Earth that are, like you said, they are disillusioned in the societal programming of things. So they're very difficult to identify.
Mesh than what we think is normal.
Yeah, and we definitely sometimes need others to help us look deeper into what it is we're holding, to show us those reflections of what those things are. I would say for me, when it comes to the forced breeding program, there are some key indicators that would allow a divine feminine to kind of start to self-reflect in that space. Well, am I or was I a part of that program at some point? Am I carrying some of the wounding from that? And like you said, it's all about getting to that space where we can ultimately feel good about our creation energies, getting to that space we can feel like we're healing, like we're not holding resentment, like we're not holding wounding, like we're not carrying this over our head and disallowing ourselves from manifesting our soul purpose and all of the divine alignment that goes into that. Some of the key indicators that I've been recognizing recently, I think that can start to allow a divine feminine to look further to see if she was a part of that, would be if they have had children prior to their awakening. And if they have been unsure if their partner was a karmic partner, or if their partner was karmic. So that sometimes is a key indicator, is if you've had children prior to your awakening, and if you feel that your partner was karmic, that potentially you could have been a part of the forced breeding program. See, a lot of women who are in this were tagged or marked with the fleur-de-lis implants, which is an energetic imprint that basically came down from the Nephilim interbreeding, the forced breeding programs that came down during that time. This is an offshoot from the original massacres that were in the Lemurian timeline. And so there were these original genocidal happenings that happened during the first cataclysm of Atlantis. And it's where there was a huge draconian reptilian invasion that came up through underground subterranean portals and basically invaded the Mayans, the Mayan grandmothers. I do feel like it had something to do with the grid fabric in the Atlantic area. So Isla Mujeres, South America, that was some of the original invasion points in the actual planetary field and in the location itself. But it ultimately happened all over the world. It happened in ancient Egypt. It happened in Australia. It happened everywhere. And so what happened was there was, I would say, an evolution of that went through many different types of forced breeding programs since that point in time. Like I said, the Nephilim was one of them. There was also a lot of forced breeding programs with the Irish, and also with African women, West African women, the Atlantic slave trade, all of these things. Slavery in itself was an offshoot of the forced breeding programs. And so now it's kind of modernized itself into an implant tagging system. I would say the technology has evolved. So they don't necessarily have to anymore have these big forced breeding programs, which they could potentially if we went into maybe another World War III, because they definitely used this technology in World War I and World War II. And so as I start getting fired up about it, but it's because we combat this demonization of the feminine that has basically, biblically, with the enmity that has been put between us with that serpent in the Garden of Eden. you know, this enmity that has came between us and our children, us and knowledge, us and our fertility, our sexuality, that, you know, it's just this, you know, big siphoning Metatronic implant that's just inserted itself in between that. And so that continues to manifest itself throughout history into those forced breeding programs. And so, yeah, that fleur de lis implant was placed through the interbreeding with the Nephilim on the Mary Magdalene and goddess Isis bloodlines. Okay. And not just them, you know, extensions. I mean, the Pleiadians, if we go galactic, the Hydras, the Cassiopeans, the Cygneusians, you know, any of the star nations that are carrying some of the more core indigo templating as the divine feminine, because they carry the ancient tribal codes and they carry a lot of the Akashic descent from Lemuria, from the indigenous, from the original Anangu people. And so I think we're, you know, identifying this more and more and more as they become more visible. Like you said, it's something at this time that is removing more of the veil for us women. And I can see the layers of that just stripping more and more.
Yeah, I feel like this work is so important because for the most part, you know, many of these energies, like we're all carrying them, that they've been normalized. And this is also why it's sometimes so hard to fully wake up. In the EarthStar Academy terminology, we call this lucidity training. To me, it feels like yanking your eyeballs open and just like looking at things, you know, as for what they are. Intergenerational trauma that's creating chaos in families. We want to say, oh, it's because our families are asleep, you know, they just don't understand me. But really the chaos and the irritation and the wounding in the family lines, what is that? What is that energy that is erupting? Why aren't families just existing in this happy, loving, united space of communities and tribe and just existing with the earth and, you know, delight and ease? The reason is because there's all of this wounding and trauma, and that trauma isn't just from, you know, the regular things that has happened in our life. They come from interdimensional manipulation, genetic experimentation.
Yeah, sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but I wanted to almost like put this little piece in there. Yeah. Intergenerational trauma from hybridization with reptilians, yes, with zetas, with insectoids. That's what the forced breeding programs are for. So when we're carrying all of this karma, and Marguerite, I'm sure you could probably chime in and like explain this more, because where does that, you know, trauma from the hybridization, it's the karma that comes in from being hybridized with those that have taken soul collective incarnations to be limited to particular genetic capacities of their ascension abilities on this earth.
Oh,
I do have a lot to offer. Would you like me to jump in here, Z and Indy?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, because I was taking little notes. So I want to go back to my own personal story as well, because I think I'm a couple of steps removed in terms of the recentness of this or my memories, but I do feel that I've had memories that have driven my entire life, this passionate mission to right things on planet Earth, and this eruption of the information about divine birth that came through to me. When I started using plant medicine back, you know, about, well, I would gauge this to about 15 years ago or more. That's not when I started, but that's when this information came into me. I had this plant experience where I was like, what the hell is going on? I felt as though I was accessing something where I had been part of something that had committed a sin so grave that was unforgivable. And it was about thinking that I was equal with the Godhead. Now, after a number of years of figuring out what this was a memory of being part of the fallen angel contingent. So because there's nothing wrong with being one with the Godhead. But when it's coming from where it came with the fallen angels, that's a problem. Because what this was about competition and division and power. It was not about unity and not about self-expression of the divine. It began the warfare and the power struggle back to this angelic fall, whenever the heck this was. So here as me, little, Marguerite, on our couch trying to figure out what is this thing. Then I realized it was a memory. Okay, that I was part of this fallen angel contingent. And it's like, oh my God, no wonder, here I am trying to be part of this, reclamation, right? Because the better parts of me are understanding this. And then, as the years were going on, I was starting to get these downpours about divine birth as a real thing, these priestesses that were doing it, meeting women of this day and age who had had these experiences and so forth. And then back in, I don't know what year it was that I wrote that blog, I'd have to go look. I was sitting at my computer and all of a sudden I just got no medicine at all, just started getting these downpours, because what I was able to connect was my personal history in this lifetime of some kind of issue that I had toward men and some kind of warfare that was within me around that. And I was like, when I started looking at my own behaviors and these sort of queen-like behaviors of like needing to be worshipped, needing to have all the attention, needing to be adored, I was like, what is that? This is destroying my life. And then I realized this was a memory of being a reptilian queen. And it's like the wicked stepmother in the Cinderella. I have been all those characters, okay? I've been Cinderella, I've been the wicked stepmother. The wicked stepmother is a reptilian image. And I had a wicked stepmother in my life with all this karma, right? So as I started understanding, holy crap, these real serious shadow parts of me that were reptilian queen, then I was like, what happens if I accept that I was a reptilian queen? And then all this downpouring came about the relationship between the reptilian queens and the reptilian kings, reptilian females and males. And that's what was in that blog, is that downpour about how there was so much animosity between them. There was so much power struggle because of their whole story and how they had gone wrong and the misery between the males and females there. The queens still held sway in that reptilian thing, and they might still. And this was verified by Len Caston, who said, oh, in the reptilians, the queens are the worst. And I was like, why did I already know that? And so what I started receiving was that the queens had a vagina dentata. That is that image, that Freudian image of the vagina with teeth, sharp teeth, okay, razor teeth. And then the males had the phallus that could become a sword. So as they started going deeper and deeper into their sexual misery and their fighting, the women would engage with males sexually, but if they were angry, they could turn on their vagina dentata, and then the male could turn on his phallic sword, and then it was like a pitched combat. So the sex was no longer sex, it was a war. And this is where this whole Tiamat being ripped up from her vagina upward by Marduk, came from, where that is a memory. That is a memory of reptilian pitched warfare as sex. This is what they brought to planet Earth. The male reptilians were like, the hell with this. We've had enough of this. We're going to greener pastures where we can have sex the way we want and not be threatened. Because these females would do it, especially if the males raped the prepubescent reptilian girls who didn't yet have the vagina dentata, you see. So they could have their way. And when the queens found out about it, they're like, come hither, let's have sex. And then they'd be like, I'm castrating you. And half the time these males would die. That's it. So then la-di-da-di-da, they decide to go somewhere else where they can have peace of mind. And they decided this sector of the universe, whatever it is, they're making camp, blah, blah, blah. And that's why patriarchy is male privilege oriented, because of these males that came from the reptilian zones started inculcating all their values and, you know, getting loosh and food from everything that they were doing. And these forced breeding programs came out of this. And I talk about in my work that the Nephilim story is part of, indeed, it's in the Bible. It's like the sons of God and the daughters of man. They were interbreeding right there. This was a distortion of divine birth, cross interdimensionality sex that was part of divine birth. Okay. So coming to terms with this and this karma. And then I started realizing, why am I so irritated by these frickin' gray aliens and all of this stuff with these abductions? I started getting fascinated by this. And I was like, we need to start the Just Say No movement about we can't have our wombs abducted by, and I'm like, why am I so interested in this? Well, I'm like, was I abducted? I had a reading by Carl Mullis and he's like, yes, you were. And what I have in my mind is 6 years old. I don't have the memories, but I'm like, I have the memories in the sense of my body and this righteousness that like, this has to stop, you know, women of planet Earth say no, and wondering where those children are. And I was careful to never have children in this lifetime. I was careful to not get impregnated because I was like, I am not sure about this whole thing. I don't know what's going to go down. I don't trust myself as a mother. I don't trust this whole situation. So I gave up having children in this lifetime to give birth to all of this stuff, okay, to try to reclaim my karma and move on with it and make this the last lifetime that I have to go through this crap.
It's amazing. I love it. I love your story.
And I love your story. I mean, I know people are going to be very, very fascinated about, and I hope you will share at some point, either today or another time. And Z, I know you have so many other things to share as well, but what was your experience of this forced breeding? You know, you are now ground zero. Like I'm talking about the Nephilim, hey, historical, you know, but you're like still here. I mean, we are all still here, you know, we've all had it on some level. But yeah, I mean, that story is powerful because I have people, clients, you probably do, you both do, coming to me all the time. They're like, I don't know, these memories, blah, blah, blah. And I'm, you know, helping them move through it. And we need to tell these stories as a part of being able to move ahead. Sorry, these are unpleasant stories, but we need to go there.
Yeah, that's very true. It's very delicate and difficult, I think, to talk about fully my experience with it. I think that's something that I am starting to learn to cultivate, to be able to share with others as I continue to heal myself within the journey. But I do think a lot of the wounding around it is still fresh. And I can also see it's very fresh in other divine feminines that we're still learning how to talk about this.
I am still pissed off.
Yeah.
You know, and until we all share our stories and have, you know, an encounter group about being tagged and forced breeded and whatever the heck else abducted, you know, we're not going to get past it. So this is a part of it. It's just like expressing our rage, our grief, our horror at what has happened and may still be happening, who knows, every night.
Yeah, it's really interesting what you say about the grays and abduction. That's something I've been seeing lately, which has been blowing my mind. How extensive the abduction and the cloning programs actually are with the grays. I
know, because they are AI informed DNA. That's all they are. They're AI hybrided DNA that lost their souls. So they lost their abilities to procreate and reincarnate and have souls. So now they want it, and they want it bad. And so what they're doing is all these experiments, and they're seeing how much of our DNA can we get into this being? How can we experiment with the amounts so that they can be more fully us, but have enough that we can have a human soul and reincarnate? And that's what they're doing. So we've got all these children running around that are banging their heads against the wall because they're half gray alien.
Yeah.
And we're calling it autism.
Wow.
But I feel like this ties into not just autism, but basically any almost any birth defects that
I know.
could come from genetic experimentation. And
Absolutely.
even the fact that people are not connecting to source, the fact that people are living their lives and they have no awareness of divinity or their own soul, that is already a sign that there is genetic degradation, because our genetic expression includes our holographic personality, our holographic and multidimensional personalities that are inherently informed by our soul. So if a person is not fully expressing their soul through their body, they are already under genetic degradation.
Yeah.
And so when we think about the originally intended genetic template expression of the human being, I believe the original template of the human is divine, is joyful,
right.
connected, it's creative, it's expansive, it's full of beauty and respect and
Eden.
reverence for
It's
life.
the Garden of Eden.
Yes, it is the heaven on earth vibration. And so because you can see most people are already not in that original vibration. And in fact, there's all sorts of programming that say, well, that vibration is enlightenment and you have to try so hard to become that if ever you're lucky enough. That's all inside of this programming of degrading our DNA.
Yeah.
And so if from that vantage point, yeah, like, you know, kids that have to take not psychedelics, pharmaceuticals.
I know.
Degrading the
No.
DNA and all of that stuff, you know, it's all part of this.
One thing that I found really interesting, having, you know, hybrid children myself, and also just observing other reptilian types, it's actually a very difficult thing, because it's not that the being that is maybe a higher percentage or a degree of reptilian wants to be that. It's that they're actually a prisoner to their own consciousness.
That's the horrible thing. That's the real horror. When you think about that, rattling around in a body like that. And though the green pasture thing of that is we can change the DNA. And it's much easier than we think. And that's what we're all about here, through various types of meditation, through singing bowls. I know somebody who helped her child recover from autism through these methods. And whenever people come to me with these stories, I'm like, look, you guys need to create a network, and that just fizzles on the vine. But it's like, you need to figure out how you're going to Lemurianly work with these children to change their DNA, recapture the original human implant, you know, the original human template, and dissolve the rest of it, send it away.
I think one of the hard things I've noticed with mothers in the forced breeding programs and mothers dealing with these children is that it's not just them and their children, it's them and the other family members that also might be more dominantly reptilian, or that, and also the court system, the legal systems that are also, you know, and so when these mentalities come together, they empower one another. Reptilians want other reptilians to be reptilian.
That's right. That's right. And gray alien, they're minions, you know. The gray aliens got in on the deal because they agreed that they would do certain things for the reptilians. So then they got to be part of their own breeding program. They got their own contracts with Eisenhower or whoever. Okay. So, you know, these are the types of things that it's been very difficult for me to talk about. I know, Indy, you were saying you get flack and all this and that. And it's like, I've toned it down over the last few years, because I'm like, let me just focus on Mother Mary for a while, you know, because I need relief from this. And I cannot be the only voice saying this stuff, freaking everyone out, you know. But now I just feel like, Z, thank you so much for getting us together. I truly honor you for just recognizing, calling the women. We have to do this together.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I feel like in this work that we've been doing, so I feel like this work that I'm holding space for is the absolute bioregenesis of our biology, and thus rebirthing, re-embodying the highest blueprints, templates genetically possible in human form. And we're talking about 12D, 24, 48. And that's, you know, the stuff that Yeshua and Mary and Anne and Babaji and all sorts of true ascended masters, not these fluffy ones that come on postcards that are just smiling at you. True ascended masters that are, scientifically aware, are intelligence, are aware of how the universe and creation works, because they love God and love creation so much that they devoted their whole lives to studying and being a part of it and co-creating with it. And so from that vantage point, that is really the solution. There is a lot of devastation that we are learning to open our eyes up to, but the most important thing that we need to learn to open our eyes to is the power that is inherent inside of
it.
The power that is inherent inside of our womb. One of the greatest deceptions of the breeding program here on Earth right now is that humans can only create through making children, making babies. Humans can't create anything else. We can't create wealth. We can't create intergenerational abundance. We can't create healthcare systems. We can't create our own education system. Everything is created for us. We can't change the reality in any way besides to create more slaves for the system.
Right.
That is the basis of, I feel like that's the most present form of the breeding program as it exists in modern times, aside from the interdimensional.
I know.
And so for women to learn to create parthenogenically in our own lives, for us to learn to connect to source energy and how that source energy is intended to flow through our biologies, through our bodies, through our DNA, so that we are exuding perfect divine energy. Because then I feel like this is my sort of extreme sport, as I like to say. I know a lot of people like skiing and jumping off cliffs and stuff. I'm going to Earth and I'm restoring DNA. That's what I'm doing. So it's like looking up the sushi menu, all right, Draco, reptilian, we got some gray in there, let's get some insectoid, let's just throw it all in there, we'll go down there and have a picnic.
That's right.
I want to mention though too that it's not just negative reptilians that are here on the Earth. There's also positive reptilians.
Because we're in duality, right? Everything has its good and bad.
Yeah, exactly. But I think we forget that, the reptilian species, reptoids, serpent, naga lineages, these are some of the first beings ever here on this Earth.
And the greatest deception that happened was the reptilians created a confusion between them and the dragons. They even mind fricked people like Archangel Michael, Saint Patrick, and others to make them think that the dragons were negative. In other words, that the dragons were them. And what I started remembering is that actually the dragons and the reptilians share some kind of DNA.
I feel like the reptilians are genetically modified and degraded dragons. I feel like it happened from the AI, basically.
This was part of what happened during the fall. The fallen angelics are the ones who did it. They started this. Yes. They started the destruction of the dragons by negative, because they could, by negative inserting and negative hybriding the dragons into the reptilians. So that's why they're so similar looking. Now everyone's confused. What's a dragon? What isn't a dragon? What's a naga? What's a demonic being? And this is the worst thing that has ever happened in creation.
I think of this in the format of a spectrum of the healthy expression of DNA. So we have certain qualities that are the original traits of the high original creational dragon guardians of the universal whole. And those are strength, courage, compassion, benevolence, right? Protection, guardianship, containment, the holding together, the blessing of, divine love. And so when you have genetic degradation, what happens is that the structure or the vibration frequency of that original template is distorted, and it starts to lose those original qualities and literally fall down through bandwidths of consciousness into the lesser qualities of separation, fear, I don't know,
aggression,
aggression, exactly. Mhm.
murder.
Yeah. Predators.
Yeah.
But I think they're crocodilians. I think a lot of they're like a crocodile type of reptoid. But what I have noticed about those types is I think it's been an overlord system. I think ultimately it comes down from the Great Cthulhu, which
Mhm.
is like a squid-like
Ooh.
beast
Wow.
type thing that is from the Pacific Ocean. And the Cthulhu was connected to the fish gods and the Dagons, which were the gods and the lord or the overlords of like the Pope, because you see the Pope with the piscatory ring,
Oof.
and they
That's
worship
interesting.
the fish gods. I think the Draco is like a genetic degradation or modification
Wow.
of a hybridization between what was the Cthulhu and what is, like I said, like a crocodilian type of
Interesting.
draconic, being. But I think they're all overlords over each other. So like the
Yes,
Cthulhu would be the overlord of the Draco, the Dracos would be the overlords of the Anunnaki, and they're all reporting back up
that's right.
the reptilian hierarchy.
That's totally right. And it's so interesting how the film Arrival is about these what do they call them? They're like squid-like beings, as being the there's a scientific term of what they're not crustaceans, but
A
the other.
Hydra.
Well, essentially that's what they were. So see, like that films like that are trying to give us some information, but prepare us for like a kind of a hijacking of the whole thing. Like the reptilians and the angelics, kind of have to fight in these films where they're giving disclosure, yet the negative is trying to use it to further program and screw us up, mess up our mind about what is friend, what is foe.
Yeah. And when you are hybridized with that, the reptilian gene is so strong and
Yeah.
it's so hungry for warmth and light that it wants to consume and actually eat the original angelic aspect. And actually, so it's so hard to watch because they're actually feeding off of their own light until there's nothing else to feed on. And then they are searching for warmth and others to then feed off that light.
And in that, I feel like this is another type of Indigo 3 contracts. I feel like in the past, the Indigo 3 contract was only talked about in terms of the rehabilitation of another soul. But I feel like the rehabilitation of fallen genetics is probably an even more predominant Indigo 3 contract at this time than the soul rehabilitation. Because, a lot of people are, just like the sushi menu I was talking about, right? We are coming in and stepping into these lineages and specifically being born into these templates and situations. And so I do feel like making a steer towards the Indigo mission is probably relevant at this time, because people are probably wondering like, holy cow, I'm feeling the brunt of this. Like, I haven't been able to step onto my mission for 30, 40 years. Like, what the heck am I supposed to be doing?
Yeah, that's right. And like you were saying, Z, earlier, all this has been passed off as like, oh, that's life.
Mhm.
Oh, suffering is a part of life. Oh, that's just the way it is. And I'm starting to realize how on every level of the misery in my life, this is part of this whole plan and the manifestation of this negativity, down to even like how I look at myself in the mirror and all the self-criticism that women have, that hatred, like no matter how beautiful a woman is, do we know one woman on planet Earth who's happy with the way she looks? Or does everyone have something where she's criticizing herself, sending negativity, or her body, blah, blah, blah? This is like a big thing. And the magazines and the media images are all feed into that stuff.
That is an interdimensional viral program.
Total.
Use.
It's definitely a tag.
And
Yeah.
I want that out of my life. And I still deal with it, every day. And then as a woman ages, it gets more and more intense, right? So it's like, that's just one example of the misery. And I'm just realizing every aspect of the misery I've ever experienced is a manifestation of this.
Yeah, it's very intense just how deep I call it bio-spiritual abuse, because it's
Yeah.
not just emotional abuse, it's not physical abuse, it's abuse of our incarnation process, it's abuse of our spirit and our biology, and how those two things come into each other. And so, you know, these are kinds of the programs that are so hard to, they are really hard to clear. You know,
Yeah.
they require a lot of devotion and a lot of time spent bringing in the higher energies so that they can be overridden. I mean, that's really the only way for it to, you know, clear permanently and to restore the template of it.
Right.
One
That's
thing
right.
I'm
And that's
noticing
why.
is one thing I'm noticing, there's just so much trauma around it, so much pain. I've spoken to a lot of women that, you know, just what they went through the education system and the school programs, you know, like how it just, there was so much torment and torture and bullying and antagonizing that, I mean, some people don't even recover from some of those things. They live lives of, you know, complete body misery,
Yeah.
Unable to have, you know, healthy sexual or intimate relationships. I mean, it's just, I've met a handful of people where, you know, I almost feel like I need to create some sort of healing just from, you know, school traumas.
Absolutely.
Bullying, I mean, and it creates all of that body dysmorphia.
That's right. Total body dysmorphia. I'm a victim of that, unfortunately. And yeah, and that's why I've been working with Mother Mary, because she knows about all of this stuff. She's not this mamby-pamby, you know, individual that is used as a projection for people being mamby-pamby. That's what I'm going to talk about in one of my presentations. She is a great scientist who devoted all of her existence and her lives, many lives on planet Earth, to rectifying this. And now she's here. I am ready. You know, Mary Magdalene was the precursor. She was the more identifiable one that went through, you know, she's still there with us, but Mother Mary is like the goddess head. She is like manifestation who transmuted it totally into Sophia. And she knows about all this. And so every month I have the Mother Mary Love and Empowerment Circle, and we work on this level. We work on the level of restoring the DNA. We work on the level of restoring timelines and healing and whatever. Every month I have a different theme with her, you know, as our guide, as our backgrounder. And so that's how I feel like I'm attempting to weave together my karma and all of these aspects of my research with, you know, moving us forward. And I'm so glad to be able to do this with you all as well.
I think that's so amazing. So exciting. Mother Mary was one of the first spiritual experiences I think I've ever had, was when she came to me. My awakening, I had destroyed my body with poisoning it, you know, all through my 20s with drugs and alcohol. And my body finally got to a point where it was like, if you don't stop, you're going to die. And that manifested in my cycles and my reproduction and my hormones. And I was so sick for years trying to clear that toxicity. And Mother Mary finally came to me one day and just came into my body, literally just walked into my spirit and was me. And she picked me up and she said, "You're now going to walk in my strength." And she stayed inside my body for 2 weeks.
Wow.
And she just held me up. She helped me take care of my kids. She helped me just pick myself up from this most broken space. And so I'll just never forget my connection to her. It's so powerful.
Yeah.
She is the divine priestess. She is the one.
Wow, what a powerful story. And yes, she's led me to do that, to merge with her, merge my womb with her. And I healed, you know, a thing that happened in my womb. I have women do that. I invite women to go into her womb and be regestated, or at night when you're freaked out, you go into her womb or go into her cloak. And yeah, she merges with us a lot in these meditations. I just kind of get led because she's like, I am you. She's like, I'm not about being worshipped. I am the template that you're restoring. So yes, I can come into you. I can help you upgrade.
I've got tears. I feel like that's so powerful for women to hear, because I do feel like sometimes the trauma and the degradation could just feel like it's so much, and there's kids and there's households and all sorts of stuff going on. And so to hear that, you know, you have walked through that, and also the multidimensional higher angelic support that we have, you know, on this path.
That's right.
Amazing.
And
I was
Sophia,
going to ask you, Marguerite, how do you see the Black Madonna then? I'm curious because some of my research I've done,
yeah,
I've seen Medusa. Like, I know Medusa's head is held underneath the Vatican. I also know that it's held in the Parliament buildings in Winnipeg, which is like on one of the ley lines to the Dove Light Grid templating. So I feel like there's some sort of manipulation that they're holding that captive of, like the Black Madonna, the victimized woman, the woman they don't want to
that's right.
let free.
That's
I've been seeing her as like the reflection of the Virgin Mary, just in like the Black Mother template.
Yeah. So this is a perfect example of how the synergy happens between the three of us and other oracles. Like, I'll hear something, I'll be like, oh my God, I literally didn't know that literally that head that Perseus took of Medusa was used. It was served, created, and used, and, you know, preserved. Because here's another story. I realized that one of my incarnations was Danae, who was impregnated by Zeus when he tricked me by merging into a shower of gold. The shower of light was one of the technologies with how the divine birth priestesses conceived. So that Anunnaki reptilian hybrid decided to turn himself into appearance of a shower of light and impregnate me with Perseus. So I realized that this was one of my incarnations through various things, and including a woman who was channeling the Pleiades, and came up with it. And I'm like, oh my God, now I know why I'm the only person in the world who ever created the lineage of Danae, like literally the family tree in my dissertation. Perseus then went on. What happened was, so I was mortified, I was horrified that this had happened, but I loved my son, my hybrid son. He was tricked into cutting Medusa's head off as follows. What they were told is that this king wanted to marry or basically have sex with me. And I was still trying to get back into my virgin template. And Perseus wanted to support me in that. And the king said, well, if you bring me the head of Medusa, I won't do it. Perseus goes all the way. Now, who is Medusa? She's a North African virgin birth priestess with the codes of the positive serpent. Okay. Related to the original Athena, etc., who was not born out of Zeus's head. That was him hijacking parthenogenetic birth. All right. So Perseus goes all the way over, gets the head, brings it back. The king rapes me anyway. It was one of these horrifying. So before I knew any of this, I'm like, I am so mad about this Medusa thing. I almost got an image of her from the Museum of Boston Fine Arts to put over my bed. They sold it. I almost got one. And I realized, and I started getting all these women reattaching Medusa's head in rituals. I did this in my divine birth the first couple of years that I taught my program. 14 cities in Italy of women got into, and men got into this, and did reattachment in like 2014 or so, reattachment of the head of Medusa rituals. Okay. And I was involved in one of them. So this is how this comes into present day life and how we're trying to figure this out. Now, I didn't realize until this moment that literally the head, these beheadings, these use of the skulls of these women after death are hijacked, right? Hopefully the one of Mary Magdalene is being preserved in a positive way, but you know, that skull is there in Saint-Marie de la Mer, or wherever it is that they every year they take it out. Anyway, we've been looking at all these beheadings of women, and you started getting me into the connections. So Medusa's head needs to be once and for all reattached to her body and reclaimed and taken out so that it's not continuing to feed, because the Black Madonna energy, again, it can go both ways, right? Because we're in duality. There's the Black Madonna that I nurtured myself on at CIIS, when I was with Lucia Chiavala Birnbaum and teaching about the Black Madonna. She's the Loamy Earth indigenous Mother Mary, but then there's the whole other hijacked Black Goddess, Black Madonna, Black Lilith thing that's going on that Lisa Renee talks about. So it's a mind frick because we're in duality. So it's like both and. So we have to turn to, what's positive and somehow integrate the rest of this, just like I have to integrate my reptilian queenhood. Like we have to integrate, in a sense, this shadow. So that's what I would say about all that at this stage. We need to get that head of Medusa back.
I do keep getting messages that I'm supposed to go to Rome, to the Vatican, to do something there with that. I just don't know what it is yet specifically. It's still unfolding, but I didn't know that there was reattaching the Medusa, her head, like rituals. So that's really interesting.
I'll send you the link to my blog where I wrote about it and have some photos.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank
the
you.
Women, why Italy? They all got into it. They were like, they understand unconsciously, holy crap, Medusa's head is governing this reptilian agenda under Rome, which is the squid that's, feeding out into the whole world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And not to denigrate the really good clergy people who are meaning well, and nuns that, who are meaning well. Again, it's, there's duality everywhere.
I think Rome as a whole is a location that we've always kind of targeted for our group work, our grid work, our healing work, just because intuitively, there's just so much there. Some of the remote views I've seen, just children graveyards around the actual Vatican itself, that the nuns would be reproducing or also being raped by priests, and that they would just like abort the babies and then they would bury them in these graveyards around the Vatican. So it's just like, it's a catacomb. It's just a place of death.
And what I saw in one of my medicine ceremonies is that the nipple of that basilica is an artificially created interdimensional portal where the ships come in and out. Take it or leave it, decide and discuss amongst yourselves. But that's what I saw. Okay.
Well, there's so much there with it. Also, the obelisks are the phallus.
Totally.
It's a way that they're sexualizing the grids, like.
Totally.
Yeah.
So they have that artificial womb, which is St. Peter's. All the basilicas are artificial umbilicuses. I talk about this in my most recent discussion blog about Tara, the Hill of Tara, as originally being a portal, a womb portal, where they have the image of the two replicating ova at the top of it encoded. But what did they put? They replaced the original stone of destiny that designated the real kings with a total phallic. What is this? That is the rape of Ireland, people. And it's going on every single day.
Wow. I would love to hear you go into that.
So those people are being raped and they know it. That's why they're all up in arms, or they're alcoholic and drunk, because they cannot handle what has happened to their beautiful she lineages and fairy lineages there. They are beautiful hearted people that have been smashed to smithereens in a perpetual rape now with that supposed stone of destiny that is not. There was even a little girl there who was playing. She's like, this feels like it doesn't belong here. Wow. I'm literally hearing this sitting there, along with the story that the original stone of destiny, one guy is saying the original stone of destiny, he said, did you know it was from here? The Scottish stole it. And then the British stole it and put it in Westminster, where it was still continually used to coronate kings on. Now it's back in Scotland. It's kind of square and this and that. You know, I'm sitting there just trying to cope with all of this, because that stone of destiny was given by the Tuat De Danann, the shining one beings that came in through those British Isles portals. And then they tried to have an interbreeding with humans, which you can see all around Ireland. Anybody who looks like a fairy is. When they say somebody has the map of Ireland on their face, what they have is the map of the fairy, the DNA of the fairy, and half of them don't even know it. I went to the horse show in Dublin. Half the people were fairies, and they're like walking around totally unconscious. They don't realize it. And it's like, Lord of the Rings, get me a fairy. They're all over the place, interbred. So they need to grab their DNA and start doing this thing that you're describing, Z.
Whew. All right. Should have had some popcorn ready. Prepared for this.
And so it's so interesting to me, Indy, that you and Lisa Renee are saying that Ireland is a major player in this, and also African countries, things like that. I mean, like, wow. It's all, why was I called to go to Ireland a couple of weeks ago?
The Irish women were targeted. They were targeted out of all the other major races. Them and the Africans, West Africans, for some reason, they were taken as slaves. I can't remember the actual event that it was, but I can look it up and try to figure out what that was. But I know it was a huge portion of their timeline that they've brought these, you know, trauma memory fields into their intergenerational, you know, Akashic timelines and fields and memories. So I know there's a lot that they're overcoming.
That's right. And we have to work with the Fae, the she, that race, the Tuat De Danann, to help. They are part of our allyship to rectify this. And I think they're not just in Ireland, but that's, you know, there was a major strain of them that came in through there, but probably we'll find it, you know, in African legends of who these shining ones. In fact, we do. North Africa, Helen Hagen wrote the book, The Shining Ones, talking about these beings in North. And I was fascinated years ago in my archaeology days. I'm like, the shining ones. I knew.
Yeah.
We are the shining ones, and we are returning to our nature as the shining ones. And that's what this is all about. And the womb is a major aspect of this.
Here's an idea. A reality TV show where we're traveling and doing grid work and going wherever we want to go with a whole film crew.
That's right. That's right. And right at the moment, we would need massive protection.
Well, I mean, that's where the divine masculines come in. Like, I feel like the divine birth priestesshood, I mean, that was something that touched me so deeply reading your book, The Mystery Traditions and Miraculous Conception, was knowing that, you know, we always had the masculine priests who were in such deep reverence of all of the things that we did and we were practicing, and they were in complete benevolent protection, containment of us.
And that is a true knight and a true king.
Yeah.
And a true prince. That's what these males are starting to reclaim, that. Not the hijacked Knights Templar, not whatever, the kings that are really reptilians in disguise, etc.
Yeah.
Which is what they use the Stone of Destiny to create.
So I see a lot of women that I work with that do these sessions with me, and a lot of them come in with a lot of shields up. So like we were just talking about, some women feel that they're ready for this work and they're just ready to kind of go into it and give themselves to it and just release. And other women, they come in with a lot of shields of strength up, like a lot of, I'm really, really strong. I'm going to see the positivity in all of this, you know, and so their shield of strength, it's their spiritual armor, but it can be really hard for them to strip just that and break that down. So that way they can allow themselves to go deeper inwards and, you know, really see and feel their victimization as a feminine, being allowed to feel like they're a victim, being allowed to feel like, you know, they can take a second to grieve and they can look at all of the things that have happen to them in this life, starting with this life, because everything that's happened in this life has been connected to everything that's happened in their past and in the planetary Akash, and just giving themselves permission, giving themselves space to go into that. I don't even want to call it victimization. Victimization is not a good word for it. There's got to be some other word for it. But
the wounding that's inflicted.
Yeah, acknowledgement of that wounding.
Yeah.
So I think for a lot of women, it's just sometimes it takes time because you have to sit with them through all of that strength, through all of that. I'm strong, even like the swords are up, and just slowly start. It's okay. I see that. I understand. But let's get inside you now. Let's go in deep and let's really look at what's there. And I'm here with you to share that experience, to feel that with you, and allow them to go into that space. And like you said, Marguerite, grieve. And yeah, I think that's what will continue to allow us to get to those deeper core levels, so that way we can get ultimately to that space where we're all working in harmony. And you said, where we put the swords down towards each other, right? Because throughout history, even other divine feminine have been the enemy.
I know. Queen Elizabeth
cut off
the very Queen of Scots. Holy cow. Think about that. I mean, the women were enacting that very abusive reptilian beheading behavior into queens fighting who had both had fae, fairy, she lineage. One perhaps more so than the other. And the reptilian was like, no, we're going to subsume that for now, but not forever.
Complex. I feel like the shielding sometimes is like, because there's a distortion in the collective masculine energy where we're often having to protect ourselves, and like our protector, our guardian, our leader in an energetic way is leading us into chaos and are abusing us. And so that inner masculine has had to be amplified so strongly, and that inner masculine had to take on a role that is beyond what is natural or easy or comfortable for most women. And then we get stuck there because without that healthy masculine energy in society, we're not safe to just be like, just think about how it's illegal to be shirtless in public for women. And even if it was legal, most women would be too afraid to be shirtless in public.
I think as women, we're just up against so much, at least with modern day agendas. I've done some videos before where I've gone so far to say that I think they're just simply trying to eradicate the feminine off the earth completely. Like we get into these certain points in times and like political agendas where they want to strip feminine of her rights. They want to turn society against female injustices. I mean, you've seen it recently when we had the Johnny Depp case. Like you've seen how Amber Heard became she became, the villain.
Yeah.
And at that time, I've seen other female justice cases that were taking on the similar type of collective mentality. It's like they want to see the feminine as the antagonist. They want to lose all compassion and empathy towards feminine issues. They want to turn men into women and actually replace her role as the divine portal.
Oh yeah, right.
Really doing away with the womb.
Doing away with women because we don't know what a woman is. And anything can be a woman.
Like we really got to get discerning. Like let's look at the light and the dark of that whole thing. Yeah.
I mean, I think about that because think about I love Jesus, I love Yeshua and everything that he embodied, but obviously we don't when we think about the women that were around him, people think they're just these sorry little girls. We think that Mary Magdalene was a prostitute, which is just the highest level of degradation you could possibly place upon a high priestess.
Right. And that Mother Mary was a passive girl.
Yeah.
Who one day was walking around the street and suddenly got pregnant.
Male God impregnated
against her will without
just
knowing what was going on. Makes no sense at all.
Yeah. I think prostitution in itself too is as a symptom of the forced breeding programs, you know, that a
Absolutely.
lot of that stuff came through all of that.
Yeah, and
And
that's not anything against like sex workers. We're talking about like the existence of the thing in the greater collective
Yeah,
society, not just individual people who are
that's right.
products or part of the society, right? Like in a
Yeah.
society where everyone knew and embodied the highest creational sciences within their biology, there would be no prostitution.
There wouldn't be the need for so many things that are going on right now that really are just leading to misery.
Yeah.
and like you said, taking away our goddessship. Like Z was just saying a second ago, forcing women to become men so
That's
that
right.
way they can keep up with social expectation and demand of a man's world.
Yeah.
And it takes away our goddessship because it exaggerates, you know, toxic femininity, toxic masculinity. And, you know, we shouldn't be taking on, you know, man's ideologies and having to take on a man's role. But that's what modern day women are having to do.
Yeah. And it's been exhausting. And it's led to all the fibroids and cysts in our womb and other problems. You know, the
Menstrual pain.
menstrual pain, cancers in our breasts. You know what I mean? It's
Uh,
like rampant because we're so exhausted with having to be both the feminine and the masculine,
Yeah.
and both of them usually in their toxic aspects. So
I have had so many women tell me that after healing the womb, they're like 30 years of menstrual pain is just gone. Like they just don't have it anymore. And that's like, it's not like this work that we're doing, it's not just all fluffy, like it is all emotional. Like even if you don't consciously know, if you have menstrual pain, your womb is feeling the pain of everything, of oppression, of emotional turmoil, of psychic garbage that people have left there, family members, you know, all of that stuff.
yeah, not to mention the negative, painful birth process encodement that is written into a certain religious document that then has taken root in human women. And what I received in medicine ceremony is actually the original birthing was
Orgasmic.
and orgasmic. So now what we have is all this contraction,
Yeah.
right? And so this is the level at which we're working at the womb to reverse out these codes, these curses, and these programs that's part of the work that we're about here.
There's so much that the masculine is working through and overcoming. I know we probably don't have time to fully go into that and touch on that topic more extensively, but I just want to say if there are any masculines watching this today that, you know, we love you guys so much. And, you know, our history is your history. And, you know, I think that's what we're trying to just bring forward is it's not just his story. There's her story as well that's just been eradicated off of the planet.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think about that all the time. Where is her story? You know, where's her creation story? You know, you think about all the libraries that have been burned, Alexandria, everything that's held in the deep vaults of suffering at the Vatican. And you're just like, what's in there? You know, because when I do the research and when I look at her story, it does take me back to Mu. It takes me back to the motherlands. I've studied a lot of James Churchward's work because he seems to be the only person that I've found that's extensively tried to cover Mu.
Yeah.
And he talks about the Nakal tablets, and that in the Nakal tablets there was woman's creation story, and that information was taken to India, but then the information has since been missing.
Yeah. And I think a piece of it is coming in through the Holy Womb Chakra teachings that Sri Kaleshwar brought in his brief 36 years here, collecting all that material. Then he's like, bye-bye. He'd left at 36, but there are some of us who are teaching. And that's one of the things the last part of my presentation is going to be going into some of that and using some of the mantras, which are basically strings of angelic syllables or spells when you utter these mantras, and they do cleanse the womb and things like that.
So what is the guy's name you said? Just curious.
Swami Shri Kaleshwar.
Okay.
And so I'll be talking about him and that material. There's a whole body of wisdom that's being held, taught by some of us, and the main repository is the Divine Mother Center in Laytonville, California, and his ashram in Penakonda, India. And of course, like everything else, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly, the shadow and the light, you know, affect both all these places, but we have to just discern and take what is good and right from these things and what can help us.
Yeah. So it's 11:39. We've gone about an hour and a half. Any final things that you want to express before we wrap it up?
Well, gratitude again for you, Z, and really looking forward to both your day and Indy's day, the September 9th weekend. I have so much honoring for what you're bringing forth, who you are, what you're living, your own dedication and devotion, and your ability to recognize and honor and bring together people who can synergistically and synchronistically amplify what we're doing. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I have to say the same as well. I'm just so happy to be connected to a strong tribe of women. I've been getting the messages over and over from the Pleiadians that it's all about our sistren. And as soon as we tap into that abundance, it's absolutely infinite, because we share the same core wounds, we share the same burdens, we share the same social deprogramming and the things that we have to go through and share. And I keep being told that we're not supposed to share that, we're not supposed to go through that alone. We're supposed to tap into our sisterhood and embrace that and call upon that, because it's there to support us. And so I feel really supported by both of you, and I'm just really excited to extend that to everybody watching and all of the divine feminines that are going to be attending our healing container.
That's right, because while they may be, you know, participants, observers, whatever, every single one of you who is watching carries a piece, and we all have to have our pieces come together. You know, we're all priestesses, we're all queens.
Yeah. I'm just getting chills as you guys are saying that. I'm so blessed. I mean, I wake up in the morning sometimes just really grateful that I have these sisters and that we can do this level of work. We know how intense it can be carrying these levels of information and feeling like we have to do something about it. And I feel like this is something a lot of our sistrens out there must feel like, right? Without, some of these tools and some of this information, it can be really intense to feel the weight of these distortions and not know how to move through it or do anything about it. And also feel this intense spark of a mission inside that you're here to do something about it. That can be miserable in and of itself. And so I do feel like this is just the beginning. Like, this work that we're bringing through is about the restoration of the original divine birthing powers of woman, restoring the original creation powers back to the woman, back to Gaia, back to the universal whole, the rightful owners, not owners, the rightful containment, the rightful birth mother of all matter. And I think that this is how we are going to build temples again. All these people that want to build healing centers and retreat centers and places where healing and farming, even farms, right? Sustainable communities, all of these places are the temples that we're bringing back. And in order to do that, we have to be strong. We have to, no, not strong in the sense that we can deal with our emotional traumas and still survive, but strong in the sense that we can just do what we need to do with the resources and the abundance and the connections and the everything that we need to do
And the restored ability to get along with one another.
Oh yeah.
Which is what has kept us, because every single community that has tried to come together has ended up being busted apart. That's part of the program. It's part of the entities that come in to keep us. So as we heal and we are able to love and get along, that's going to dismantle that, we're going to be able to work in harmony together once again.
And I feel like all of that comes from like not being able to do this level of trauma healing that we're talking about.
That's right. It's still been hidden. So as we go into these deeper levels, then it's like, oh, finally we've gotten to the bottom of it. And then it's like, now we can go forward truly.
All right. Well, September 9th to the 12th, our website is wombhealth.org, which is the true womb health organization, or the World Health Organization, but the real one.
H-O. Who? Who would be?
The Temple of Original Creation. And we're so excited to share this event with you guys. So come on out, come get your ticket.
Yeah, highly recommended.
Thank you everyone for watching.
Yes, thank you everyone.